Procedural generation. It's an interesting topic to be sure, and I'm hoping to teach you a little bit about it in Minecraft. As you can see, I have a bit of stuff set up here, and this is actually Datapack I coded that procedurally generates this dungeon infinitely. And hopefully, I can show you how I did that, and maybe you'll understand a little bit more. So what is procedural generation? Well, it's a type of generation that, unlike other generation types where you manually create things and then it's kind of like a set type of generation, it more uses an algorithm, and that algorithm allows it so that every time it generates, it can be something new. So what does this mean in Minecraft? Well, in my case, I created a big old dungeon-like thing that generates automatically. So, with a bunch of different room types, I'm able to have it generate in a different way every time I do it. And using that, you can create quite interesting structures in your Minecraft world. Now, the way I'm going to show you today how to do it isn't the only way. In fact, Minecraft actually has a built-in way to do procedural generation and dungeon generation, and that's through jigsaw blocks. Now, jigsaw blocks are great and all, don't get me wrong, but it has two major aspects that I just wanted to avoid, and I thought would be nice to tell other people how to avoid. The first of which is it can be a bit finicky sometimes. They're actually based purely off of what chunk they're in is how they generate. And so you'll have times where they'll actually mess up, and also they'll always be the same generation whenever you do it in the same chunk. Secondarily, there's this levels bar right here. And what that means is how many different rooms, basically, after the jigsaw block it will generate. And so this brings up a pretty big issue. There's a limited amount. It can only go 20 rooms deep. And so as such, you can't get an infinitely generating structure, which I solve with my method. So that begs the question, what is my method? Well, my method relies on armor stands actually. Now, let's say that this white concrete block is your starting point. As all procedural generation, you typically have a starting point. In this case, it's going to be a white concrete block here. Now, it generates an armor stand, and based on what tags that armor stand has, it will generate another room in a certain direction. In this case, the black concrete will represent the room. So let's say this just generates like a straight hallway. Well, that armor stand's now dead because we don't want it to continue generating. And at the end of this hallway, it will put another room, and then there's another armor stand there. And that armor stand then provides more information for it to continue generating, which in this case could do something like a curve. And rinse and repeat, you eventually get a randomly generated area. So, to demonstrate this concept to you, I'm going to real quick run my command that actually starts my structures generation. And so, if I simply pull up my command, I'll be able to show you what it kind of looks like. So as we can see, it just generated a bunch of different rooms. Now, if I get closer to things, it tells the armor stand that there's a player close by, and thereby will continue to generate. And as you can see, it generates randomly. This can be completely different. Like if I head over to this side, it's not going to generate exactly as that did. Instead, I'm going to get, like in this example, a really long hallway and then a bunch of big rooms. In fact, it even turns on itself. And this comes and intersects it. So, how does one actually set up one of these structures to generate? Well, the first thing you need is the pieces to the puzzle. So here we have some of mine. In this case, we have a semi-shorter room like this one, a longer room like that one, and many other types of things. But most importantly, also, typically you want some sort of hallway to go in between. Now, once you have these, you're actually going to use the internal Minecraft structure saving mechanism, which are these structure blocks, which I'll link a tutorial to how to use them because I don't actually have one currently on my channel, and I feel like there's definitely better ones that can teach you how to do that. Now, once you have gotten the structures at the ready, you need to go ahead and make your data pack. Now, once again, I'll link some resources and other videos that other people have made on how to do that, so that you can better understand that process, but for now I'm just covering this specific topic. And in your data pack, you're going to do two main things. The first thing is you're going to want to save your structures somewhere. In this case, I did my Minecraft folder in the Datapack, and here they all, there's a bunch of them, they save as NBT files. Second thing is that you're going to want to actually set up a way to generate them. Now this you can do in multiple ways. I did it in my way so that it was a bit more organized in my mind. So the way I did it was, as you can see, the thing I had generates in many directions. It can go in 4 different directions in total, and so what I did was I made those the cardinal directions, so north, east, south, west. And I split up all the generation files into those. Now, for example, in east, we have different functions. So these first functions here are actually very important to keep your structure from getting messy. And what these files do is they prevent your structures from actually generating inside of already placed rooms. And this is a problem that you'll encounter if you don't have these, as they just continuously generate without a care in the world. Now inside of this folder, I also have a place folder, and what this is basically is these are the files that actually make the structure place down. So in the case of, let's say, I want to do just a lawn hallway, right? Just a normal hallway. This is what the file would look like once it opens. We have this command here, which is a place template command, which I'll show you in a little bit, but basically what that does is it places down the structure. We then summon an armor stand at the end of that and tell it which direction that armor stand should generate. In this case, because we're coming from the east, and it's simply just going straight, we're once again wanting it to generate in the east. And then finally, you kill the armor stand that had just generated that room so that it doesn't generate multiple times. Now, as I mentioned earlier, you also want to make sure that the rooms don't intersect each other. And as I said before, these are those files, so we're going to quick look in one. Once again, we're just kind of going to do the hall T, so that's the one that I just checked how to actually place, but here's what the commands look like for having it check to see if it's available. So what I do here is, first off, this is unimportant because I'll show you what that is later, but first thing we do is we actually do a clone command. Now, the reason we do a clone command is that the clone command can actually store a result. So, in this case, that's what we're doing here. We store result into a score called amount, and we do it as the armor stand. Now, we clone the area that the hall should be generating in, and if it finds, in this case, any quartz blocks, then it will return that amount of numbers of quartz blocks in that area back into that score. Now, the reason we do this is because all of the rooms that I have created for this specifically have quartz blocks in them. So if there's a room in front of it, it will know that there is in fact a room in front of it because it returns a value greater than 1. And that's what it's doing here. If the score is greater than 1, it will actually run this command. Now, there's 2 different commands I have here, and I'll explain them in just a second, but safe to say, basically, it just doesn't generate the hall. Now, here it says, unless if the score matches more than 1. So in other words, as long as it's below 1, it should go ahead and execute the command to place the hall. Now, how do I actually get it to randomly place the different structures? Well, that's where loot tables come in. Now, in this case, loot table wise, I simply have it spawn one of the loot tables. So we're going to real quick check out the basic loot table. And it's a bit long, but basically what I did is each possible option for the loot table, it spawns in an item, in this case an apple. Now that apple will have a different name. So in this case there's quite a few, but like for example here we have room curve T. What that does is it will run the command to find out if it can generate a room that curves. Pretty simple, right? And it does that for all of these. Now, the way that I can also kind of control this in a way is I can make it so that all of these weights add up to 100, or another number of your choosing, but in this case I did 100 so I knew the exact percentages. So for example, this 4-way, so it's a 4-way stop so that it can generate more paths, has a 20% chance every time it checks to generate, and pick that. Now let's say that you can't generate the room. Well, that's where two different paths come into play. So, in this file, this is the first path, and the most common path. And what that is that it will run this command function here called top east. Now, basically what this does is it once again rolls the loot table to try and generate a different room. And it will continue doing that until it either generates a room or comes in contact with the other possibility, which is in my hall function, as my hall, my base hall, is the smallest of all my structures, and thereby if it can't generate, nothing can generate. And rather than having it run this top east command, it runs wall. And basically what wall does is it kills the armor stand and simply places a wall, and thereby ends the generation along that path. So now there's only 3 more things I have to show you, one of which is the commands for actually rolling the loot table. So we're just going to real quick check out top east, because I've been using east this entire time. And in this case we have loot spawn tilde tilde tilde, which basically just means at the selected entity, and then once again is loop, and then it's my loot table for the base loot table. Now, depending on the name of the apple, as it shows here, so basically if the entity type equals item, distance is within 1 block, which it should be because it's already inside the armor stand, and if it's an apple and its name is whatever I'm trying to generate, so first of all is a lawn room, it will then run the function to check if it can generate that lawn room. And that is where this part of the command right here comes into play, which I talked about earlier, said that I would explain it. Basically what that does is it kills the nearest item, in this case that would be the apple. And this is so that it doesn't constantly try to check if it needs to generate that room, even if the room generation fails. Now, the final thing I said I'd show you is the place command. So I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. So what the place command is it's the Minecraft way of placing a template. So in this case I can do like room B and then some commands and boom, it places this big ol' structure. And so what you want to do when you're actually planning out your custom structure is make sure that these place commands generate in a way that works for you. Because as you can see, when I placed this, it wasn't in front of me. In fact, it was quite far from that. So that's why when I go to my hall function here, it has a very specific way to place it. So if I copy that command specifically, you'll see it places to the east at my height. So that's my method to procedural generation. I hope you enjoyed and all learned something. And if you'd like to see more content where I kind of give a general overview of how different concepts may work, or if you would like me to actually go more into depth of how this works, go ahead and let me know down in the comments. And with that, I'll see you guys next time.